السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى أما بعد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل وألهمنا رشدنا يا رب العالمين. قال الله تعالى: والسابقون الأولون من المؤمنين والمهاجرين والأنصار الذين اتبعوهم بإحسان رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه وأعد لهم جنات تجري تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا ذلك الفوز العظيم. صدق الله العظيم. My dear respected Muslims, the other day someone asked me after we concluded the class, what made me choose the topic of going through the lives of the Sahaba? Why did we choose this subject matter for Monday nights? And I responded to him and I told him that the objective was, and the objective for myself is, whenever you read the story of any companion, it's impossible that you don't leave inspired. It's impossible that you leave without your resolve and your morale being uplifted. It's impossible that you leave the gathering without your heart being touched by the life of that companion. And we hope and we pray that our gathering and our sitting and our listening and our speaking is a means and a source of khair and barakah for us in dunya, and it's a mean and a source and possibly the route for us to Jannah and the means of acquiring salvation on the day of Qiyamah. Because the reality is, every one of us is going to Allah. Every one of us will transition from dunya to akhirah. And as the story of the companion we'll cover today will tell us, Man atani yamshi ataytuhu harwalatan. That Allah says, Hadith Qudsi, whoever comes walking towards me, I will send my mercies running towards that person. I will send my mercies running towards that person. And that's the objective. That you and I, when we leave these gatherings, how can we be inspired to bring about change? How can we be inspired to bring about transformation within our lives? Before we come on to the companion of tonight, it's important for us to understand that in the life of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was sometimes desirous for the guidance of people that were close to him. So the Rasul had his uncle Abu Talib, and Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was very desirous for Abu Talib to accept the deen of Allah, to the degree that when Abu Talib was on his deathbed, the Rasul came and he goes to Abu Talib and he tells Abu Talib that just say the kalima in my ear so I have something to defend you tomorrow in front of Allah. And for a moment Abu Talib hesitated. For a moment Abu Talib had a doubt in his mind. Should he say it? Should he not say it? And the ru'asa and the leaders and the kibar of Quraysh, when they saw that hesitation in Abu Talib, they said to him that at the time of your death, out of fear of death, are you going to denounce and divorce and leave the religion of our forefathers? And at that moment, Abu Talib told the Rasul ﷺ that, oh Muhammad, oh my nephew, I love you and I've supported you as much as I can, but I won't accept the deen of Islam. And that was a very difficult day in the life of the Rasul. But the ayat were revealed, إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ. That, O Muhammad ﷺ, you cannot guide those who you love. Allah will guide to the deen of Islam whoever Allah wants. The story of the companion today is a testimony to this ayah. There were so many people close to the Rasul who saw the Rasul every day. There were so many people close to the Rasul who heard the Rasul every day. But every day they made an active choice and decision to reject the risala of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But then you have a companion, Jarir bin Abdullah radiyallahu an, and another companion, they come to the Rasul, Anas ibn Malik, they come to this Sahabi, our guest of tonight. And they ask him that, were you the companion and the sahib of the Rasul? And he says, no, I wasn't. So they ask him, what do you mean? We know that you are a companion. Why are you denying being a sahib and a companion of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? And this companion responds to Anas ibn Malik and Jarir bin Abdullah al-Bajali radiyallahu an, that the true companion of the Rasul is the person who will be with the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in Al-Jannah. And then they continue the conversation. And then he asks them, where have you come from? And they tell him that they've come from Sham. And where did you go? You met Abu Darda radiyallahu an. He says, yes. And then the guest of tonight, I'm not saying his name just yet, he says that, did Abu Darda send you a gift for me? Because myself and Abu Darda radiallahu anhu were made brothers by the Rasul in Al-Madinah. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Medina, he got brothers, and he got some from the Muhajirun and the Ansar, and he joined them in ties of brotherhood. Abu Darda radiallahu anhu was joined with our companion of tonight. Does anyone know who it was? Anyone? It was none other than Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu ta'ala an. So Salman says to these companions that Abu Darda was my brother in Medina, and they had a unique friendship. They had a unique relationship. That one day Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anh, he goes to the house, and instead of seeing Abu Darda radiallahu anh, he sees the spouse of Abu Darda radiallahu anh, and she looks down. She seems like she's upset, she's not having the best day. And he asks her, what's wrong? And then she says to Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anh, and she discloses to him some of the problems she's having. She says, look, your brother Abu Darda is an amazing man. His salawat and his qiyamul layl and his siyam is unique and amazing. But he fails to fulfill the rights that I enjoy over him as a spouse. So maybe perhaps if you can speak to him. That day Abu Darda radiallahu anh comes home, and Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anh comes to his house. And as he comes to his house and the food is presented, before Abu Darda radiallahu anh can even say anything, Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anh says, let's eat. Abu Darda radiallahu anh says, inni sa'im, I'm fasting. So Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anh says, no, you have to eat with me. I implore you and I'm commanding you, you have to eat and partake in the meal. So Abu Darda radiallahu anh broke his fast. Then after that they eat, they consume the meal, and the night comes in and they retire to bed. And within a few hours, very quickly, Abu Darda radiallahu anh stands up to perform qiyamul layl. And immediately Salman radiallahu anh tells him, go back to sleep. He says, I want to perform qiyamul layl. He says, no, you can perform later. Rest, it's time for sleeping. Multiple times Abu Darda radiallahu anh tries to stand and perform qiyamul layl, and every time Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anh stops him. Finally, as the last third of the night enters, Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anh doesn't stop Abu Darda, and they both perform qiyamul layl together. And then Abu Darda radiallahu anh is advised by Salman Al-Farsi that listen, O Abu Darda, that your family has a right over you. Your nafs and your body has a right over you. Your Allah has a right over you. فَأَعْطِي كُلَّ ذِي حَقٍّ حَقَّهُ. A very important lesson for every single one of us. Some of us are sons, some of us are fathers, some of us are leaders, some of us are employers, some others are employees. Give every person their right. The morning comes, they perform Salatul Fajr, and Abu Darda radiallahu anh is still a bit uncomfortable. Yesterday I never fasted. Yesterday I never spent the entire night in Qiyamul Layl. So he goes to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and says, Ya Rasulullah, yesterday, as I was about to, Salman was to eat, he asked me to join him. I told him I was fasting, and he forced me and compelled me to break my fast. And then in the night, when I wanted to spend the entire night in front of you, standing in front of Allah, Salman Al-Farsi stopped me, Ya Rasulullah. And then the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, oh Abu Darda, what Salman done was right. Be moderate. Be circumspect. You can't spend the entire night in ibadah and forego the right of your spouse. You can't fast every day and forego the rights of your families. Many a time, if someone comes onto the deen, it's very highly likely and possible that we become so, the ecstasy is so strong, the iman is so strong, that we start to forget the rights of those around us. So now the masjid gets the right, but your son loses out. Your community gets the right, but your family misses out. This wasn't the system and the way of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Finally, before we begin his story, another lesson we take from the story of Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anh is a story of the unity of the ummah of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Over the last weekend in Chicago, approximately 10, 15, 20,000 people gathered for the World Ijtima'. And it was a gathering, I never made it myself, but the brothers that went, they told me, it was a gathering where you see unity. You see people from different walks of life, different skin color, different ethnicity, different background, different occupation. And it teaches and it motivates us to understand the importance of the unity of the ummah. Because otherwise we're fragmented and we're broken. Musalman ke har firqe ne ek dusre ko kafir kaha. Musalman ke har firqe ne ek dusre ko kafir kaha. Ek kafir hi hai जिसने सबको मुसलमान कहा. एक काफिर ही है जिसने सबको मुसलमान कहा. Amongst the ummah, every person looks at another person who does things slightly different, he's a kafir, he's a mubtadi', he's not on the manhaj, he's not on the deen of Allah, he's not on the sunnah of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We all resolve to calling each other kuffar and disbelievers and mubtadi'een. But when the disbeliever looks at the camp of the Muslims, everyone is Muslim. It's unfortunate that only the disbeliever is the one that will call every ummati of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a Muslim. Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anhu's story begins in Iran. And Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anhu, by the qasam of Allah, one of the most unique stories of any Sahabi you will ever read. Brother Salman, you know the story well. Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anhu was that companion who traveled for decades. He says that I grew up, and many other companions, we take different ahadith, we take different reports, and we narrate the story. But Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anhu tells his own story. He narrates it as narrated by Imam Bukhari and Muslim to Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma. And he says the story to Ibn Abbas, and he says, كنت فتى فارسيا من أهل أصبحان. Me and my family resided in Iran in the city of Asbahan. And we were from a qarya, from a village called Jayyan. And from the family that I came from, we were Majusiyin, we were fire worshippers. And my father was the head priest of our community. And as I grew older, my father gave me the responsibility that I was the caretaker of the fire. The responsibility I had was to ensure that that fire remained kindled 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. They never allowed the fire to become extinguished. He says that when I got closer and I gained the level of maturity, my father made me responsible. And he himself says, I was so beloved to my father that my father used to lock me in the house, kaljariya, like a slave girl. My father was so compassionate towards me, had so much love for me. He was fearful that if I let the apple of my eye, Salman, go out, something may happen to him. And in his immense, intense love for me, he locked me in the house. But then one day, my father had a great portfolio of wealth. And one of his gardens needed tending to, but my father had to take care of some other business. He had multiple properties. So my father told me, oh Salman, today I'm a bit busy. Go and take care of whatever needs to be taken care of. Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anhu says, that day when I left the house, I had been sheltered for so long that as I was going, some reports suggest he got lost. And he never knew where he was going. And as he's trying to locate himself, he passes by a church wherein people are worshipping from within. Now it's important to remember that Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anhu is in Persia. And the Christianity in Persia was very different from the Christianity in amongst the Roman Empire. There were two very different versions of Christianity. And the Christianity within Persia was a lot more authentic, closer to the teachings of Nabi Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, as opposed to the Romans. One distinct difference was, he says, as I passed by, I heard them reciting something. And as I heard them reciting something, I was drawn to that church. He says, I entered the church and I saw that the people were doing ruku and sujood. They were bowing and prostrating. Something which was unique to the Christians of Persia, not to the Christians of the Roman Empire. He says, I sat there and I watched them for hours. After they concluded their worship, something inside told me that this is what's correct. Something inside told me that this is the true religion. So I started to speak to them and I asked them, Aina aslu hadha deen? That what's the origins of your deen and your religion and your tradition? And they responded to me, Fi bilad Sham, that the reality of the origin of our faith is from Sham, the greater Syria area. What's the greater Syria area? When we see Sham in the books of Hadith, what does it refer to generally? Anyone? Is it just Syria or does it go beyond that? The Sham area is 4 countries: Palestine, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. So when we say Sham in the books of the Ahadith and Sham in the books of Siyar, in the books of Maghazi, it means these 4 countries. You got Jordan, Palestine, Lebanon, and Syria itself. So they told me that the origins of our faith is from Sham. He said, okay, next time you have a group of people that will be going to Sham, or there's a caravan that comes and they go to Sham, inform me because I want to go to Sham. He says, I went home that day and my father was panicked. What happened to Salman? Has he been kidnapped? Has he been murdered? Has someone taken my boy? What's happened? There's a whole team of people searching. He says, I came home that day and I told my father, That, oh my father, as I was going to fulfill the obligation you gave to me, I got lost and I came across a church and I heard people reciting. And as I heard them reciting and I asked them some questions and I interacted with them, I have come to the conclusion that deenuhum khayrun min deenina. That their faith, their tradition, their religion is far greater than ours. He says, my father was so upset. He said, my boy, what are you talking about? You are supposed to be preparing to take over my position as the high priest within our community. You were supposed to have been ready to take the reins of our religion, and you're well versed. You've read the books. He says, my father was so upset that he shackled me and he imprisoned me within the precincts of my own home. He shackled my legs. Some say even my hands were tied. He says, after a while, I received a letter that there's a caravan that's come and it's going to go to Sham. And oh Salman, as you requested, if you want to go to Sham, you can go, but this is the caravan. He says, I was shackled. I lost hope. How will I be able to go? But the reality is, and the lesson for you and I is, if you are true in your search of the haqq, and if you are sincere in your search of guidance, Allah will bring guidance to you. Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anhu says, somehow miraculously, the shackles with which my hands and my legs were shackled, they fell apart, they came off. And I went to those people and I traveled from where I was and I went to Sham. When I went to Sham, generally what happens, this kid, Salman Al-Farsi, has been locked up in his house. If you take a child and you send them on vacation, on their first vacation at the age of 18, and they go to any country across the globe, even if you send your son to study to London, for example, the first few days, what's that kid going to do? He's going to tour every corner of London city. There's not much to see, by the way, but he'll find something to do. Anytime you travel, the first thing you do is you look for the places of tourism. Salman Al-Farsi taught you and I that when you got an objective, you're focused. You're locked in differently. He says, I went to Sham and immediately I asked, who's the greatest scholar from amongst you? Mentorship. I want him to guide me. I want him to mentor me. I want him to teach me. The lesson for you and I is, we need to ensure that our young children have people who they are in the mentorship of. Who is my child influenced by? Who does my child take guidance from? Who does my child want to be mentored by? And generally, for the most part, it's going to be the imam of your masjid. The problem is, we bring our children to the masjid, if that, and then they leave. And once they're now 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, because we haven't brought them to the masjid enough in their younger years, we struggle now to bring them. Because now they've got a mind for themselves. Now you tell him, Ahmed, come, we're going to the masjid. He'll say, Dad, you go, I'm praying at home. Or Dad, you go, I'm going out with my friends. He says, I went and I asked, who's the greatest scholar? And they told me that person is the greatest scholar. He says, I spent some time with this person who I understood to be a scholar. And I was initially thought that this person is a person of God, is a person of great akhlaq. But the more time I spent with him, his realities became manifest, displaced and showcased in front of me. This man in reality was, even though I held him in a high esteem and I thought he's the scholar of the time, I came to the conclusion that he's the worst person in the community. He's the most disgusting person in our neighborhood. And he says, to the degree that this man was accumulating funds under the pretense of giving it to the fuqara and the masakeen. But every day I would see him receive the gold and the jewelry and the jewels. And instead of giving it to the people who were poor, he would stack it nicely in a box and he would place it away and hide it. The lesson for you and I is, this deen does not work on personalities, it works on Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. How many people's iman in Allah has been shaken when someone who they looked up to, when someone who for them was the deen in its entirety makes a mistake. In this country, sometimes we hear of incidents and people are unwilling to accept the reality. People are unwilling to accept what's happened, and sometimes it makes them leave the faith of the deen of Islam. It makes them leave believing in Allah and His Rasul. Why? Because for me, that was that person was an icon. He was the epitome of Islam, the epitome of following Quran and Sunnah. How dare he do this? How can he do that? The lesson for you and I is, every person apart from the Anbiya is a human and a mortal. They are fallible. They will make mistakes. When a scholar or someone you hold in a very high regard makes a mistake, it's the scholar that made a mistake, and you can't tarnish the deen of Islam or the name of Islam. He says that as this scholar was passing away, I asked him that you're on your deathbed. if you pass away and when you pass away, where should I go to? So he told me that, to be honest, there are very few people you will find who follow the tradition the way we do. But there's one scholar in Mosul in Iraq. I want you to go to him and study from him. He says the man passed away. The people were preparing an elaborate function for his farewell, for his janazah. And he says, I was in a predicament. What do I do? How do I tell the people and expose the man for the reality of who he was? At the end of the day, this man is a Persian. Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anh is a Persian, and he's already gone to Sham. He's not in his neck of the woods. If he tries to say something, it's very possible that he may be attacked and he could become problematic. So what does he do? He says, immediately at the time of his janazah, I took a bold step to speak out, and I told the community that this man is an evil man. This man isn't who you think he is to be. This man used to usurp the wealth that you and your families gave for the fuqara and the masakin, and he stored it. He says they were ready to pounce on me and attack me. But immediately I told them, don't worry, in order to verify my claim, I will take you to the exact location and the precise space where he has gathered your wealth. I took the entire community, and when they saw all the wealth that had been gathered, they were so furious, they were overwhelmed and overtaken by such emotions that they never even buried him. They hung him, they crucified him, they pelted his body with rocks, and they let his body decay to such a degree where ultimately they picked it up and they threw it in the trash. If you are not sincere to Allah, the system of Allah is, it's perhaps very likely that Allah at some stage will expose us for the reality of who we are. And Allah doesn't expose at the first time. The system of Allah is Allah will give you space and Allah will allow you to make mistakes. But if we continue to abuse authority, if we continue to abuse the position Allah has given us, a time will come where Allah will expose us. He says, I then went from Sham to Mosul in Iraq. And now you can understand, imagine, this boy was a boy who grew up in a family that worshipped fire. From there, his first experience with an authoritative figure in the tradition of Christianity wasn't a positive one. He could have easily said, look, what I've seen for me, it doesn't make sense. I've seen this is the reality of Christian people. I'm going to go back and I'm going to stay with my father. But something within him was urging him to search for the truth. If someone makes a mistake from one sect of the deen of Allah, don't write everyone off. Imagine if a non-Muslim was to base Islam based off us. He says, I went to Mosul, I went to Iraq. And when you are sincere, Allah will show you miracles. He says, when I went to Mosul and Iraq, I found a scholar. By the qasam of Allah, I never met anyone more pious who didn't perform the 5 salawat more than this man. He says, I stayed with him and I learned from him. And I stayed in his company for a lengthy period of time. He says, I stayed with him for so long, but the reality of this dunya is everyone has to die. And as this scholar is on his deathbed and I've immensely benefited from him and I loved him, I asked him, Sheikh, you're about to go. Where do I go next? And that teaches you and I that this man studied with scholars today and he traveled. Today we're not ready to travel. Today we're not ready to make sacrifice. We want the deen of Allah to come to us. We want the teacher to come to our houses. We want the teacher to come to me. The deen of Allah and the ilm of the deen of Allah. We have students here from, and it's a unique thing that we have. I mentioned it the other day. We have 2 boys from Orlando that study in New York, and we got 1 kid from New York who studies in Orlando. That's the system of Allah. And the other day we gave Mubarak an award, and I was thinking today when I was going through the life of this companion that we should have given him, what award did we give you? Ubay bin Ka'ab. We gave him the Ubay bin Ka'ab radiallahu an award, but we should have given him the Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu an award. Why? Because from the age of 10 he's been traveling. He went to Egypt, Misr. From there he went to Michigan, MII. Then from there he came to Boston. And from Boston now he's come to Orlando, Florida. You would think he's maybe 35, he's only 15. Turned 16 the other day. I don't know if he moved so much is because he's so mischievous and naughty. That's also a possibility. Khair. So he says, I asked my sheikh that where do I go next? So after that, as I was discussing it with him, he told me to go to a place by the name of Nasibin. Nasibin is close to the Turkey area. He said there's no one left who follows the tradition like us except one scholar in Nasibin. Go to Nasibin. He says, I went to Nasibin and I found the scholar there to also be very authentic and very pious and religious. And I spent time with him But then again, he came on his deathbed and he got sick. And as he was about to depart from the dunya, I asked him, where do I go next? Who should I study by post your demise? And he told me to go within the Turkey area to another place by the name of Ammuriya. He says, after that scholar passed away, I went to Ammuriya. And I found another scholar, faithful to the tradition. And when I found him, I sat with him. I learned from him. I benefited from him. But then the time for him to die also came. And when the time for him to die also came, and I asked him, where should I go? Listen to his answer. His answer was, والله ما أعلم أن هناك أحدا من الناس بقي على ظهر الأرض مستمسكا بما كنا عليه. Oh young boy, by the qasam of Allah, I don't know anyone in the north or the south, the east or the west, no one in this world who follows the tradition like we do. But a time will come where there will be a prophet based off our tradition we know, min ba'd ismuhu Ahmed, whose name will be Ahmed. He will come in an area from amongst the Jaziratul Arab, the Arabian Peninsula. I can't pinpoint for you an exact location, but I will give you some signs. One of the signs is that he will be in a place heavily populated by date palm trees. He will be in a location between two volcanic mountains. He will have three signs that are genuine to him. Number one is this prophet won't accept sadaqah, charity. Number two, this prophet will accept hadaya and gifts. And number three, this prophet will have a seal of prophethood bayna katifayhi, between his shoulder blades. And when you see this and you verify it, understand that he is the final prophet and stay with him and learn from him and follow him. Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anhu says, I went back to Sham. Look where his journey has taken him. It's taken him across the globe. And it's a lifelong effort, decades of traveling. And the journey never ended there. He said, I went to Sham and now I don't have a location. Where do I go? But look how motivated he was. Look how determined he was. He never knew where to go, but he knew I have to go somewhere. He says, I resided in Sham and I started to stay in Sham and I started to do business. One day a caravan came and they told us, because in those days there were many caravans from Mecca to Sham, Mecca to Yemen and different areas. He says a caravan came, and as the caravan came, they told us they are from the Jaziratul Arab. He said immediately what my sheikh had told me prior, I remembered. And he said, I told them, are you kind enough to take me to Mecca with you? Are you kind enough to take me to Medina with you? I want to go to the Jaziratul Arab. He said they agreed, they complied, and I joined them. But every time the story you would assume would get better and there would be more light at the end of the tunnel, it was just darkness. Things would always just go wrong. He says, as we were close, and we were close to Mecca and we're traveling and we're going, he says that all of a sudden we stopped at a place, and what these people done was, they shackled me, they beat me, they shackled me, they made me into a slave, and they sold me off to a Jewish person. Imagine where his journey is taking him. A man who was the son of a high priest in his community, respected, honored, revered, a great maqam and privilege. He says, but the time came where now I'm in shackles and I'm a slave. And he went through approximately 13 masters. He says there were 13 people who I was sold this household to that household. Beaten here, bruised over there, physically tortured and physically abused in location and location. But the lesson for you and I is perseverance. Today, unfortunately, like I said, we're not willing to make any sacrifices. It's beautiful to see in this community, we had these youngsters who went from here to Chicago. A sacrifice for the sake of the deen of Allah. And these sacrifices will elevate our communities, I promise you. Until we're not ready to make those sacrifices, we won't see these changes. We won't see these communities grow. Because the history of Islam was people had to travel. When Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam came, it was an indication that he was a traveler. Even though there was no marks, he was young and you have to move for ilm. When we studied, I remember when we were in South Africa, you see people from across the globe in one classroom, under one roof. Someone from China, from Nigeria, from Thailand, from France, from the Philippines, from Mali, from Chad, from Malawi, Zimbabwe, from USA, Canada, Brazil, Venezuela, all under one roof. For what purpose? Studying the deen of Allah. Aiming to try and be the Salman Al-Farsi of the time. Because ilm requires this. What did Abu Darda radiallahu anhu say? He says, Wallahi lawla thalath ma ahbabtu an abqa fi dunya. By the qasam of Allah, if it wasn't three things, I wouldn't even want my eyes to open every morning. If it wasn't for three things, I wouldn't even want my eyes to open every morning. Number one, he said, is the fact that Allah allows me to put my forehead on the ground in sujood. When was the last time you and I thanked Allah for the opportunity to make sajda in front of Him? I remember a few years ago, 2-3 years ago, I met one of the brothers in the community. And he had a back problem and he had to perform all his salawat sitting on a chair. And he said, Shaykh, wallahi, 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 the greatest thing that hurts me the most isn't the fact that I can't walk properly. Isn't the fact that I've become, or I'm suffering with this disability or this problem in my back. Shaykh, the biggest problem or the biggest regret and the feeling of sadness and grief that envelops me is the fact that I can't do sajda on the ground. When was the last time you and I even thanked Allah for that ability? Abu Darda radiallahu anhu says, the second reason why I enjoy waking up every morning is mujalasatul ulama. I have the opportunity to sit at the feet of scholars and learn. So Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anhu says that I ended up in those areas. We're gonna go faster because I noticed the other classes are about 20-25 minutes and we've been going on average 40 to 55. So inshallah we're gonna try keep it within the 30-minute mark. So Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anhu says that I was sold from family to family, household to household. Finally, someone from the Banu Qurayza in Madinatul Munawwara, they purchased me. And he says that as they purchased me, one day I was climbing a tree. And as I was climbing the tree looking for the dates and trying to pick out the dates, I heard my master from below. Someone came to visit him and they indicated towards the fact that there's a man who claims to be a prophet who had stopped at Quba, and some of the residents of Medina have gone out to Quba to receive him and listen to him. He says, when I heard this, I was so ecstatic, I jumped off my hairs were on end. I had goosebumps in my body. I was about to fall. I quickly came down and I descended from the date palm and I ran to my master and the person he was with. And I asked, what did you say? Who did you see? Where did it happen? He says that my master at that moment either slapped me or punched me in my face. And he told me, go back to work. Why are you so interested? Why do you need to know? Why are you asking so many questions? He says, I lowered my head and I went back to work. Sometimes you will listen to a khatira, you will come for Jumu'ah and you'll be moved by the speaker. But after that Jumu'ah concludes, you got to go back to work. Life got to continue. What do you do next? Where do you go? That fervor and that motivation that you received within these few moments in the time of Salatul Jumu'ah, whatever class it may be, you're supposed to carry it with you wherever you go. Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anhu says, I heard and I knew that the Rasul is around in Quba. So the next day I went to one of the people within the home, one of the ladies, and I asked for the day off and she was kind enough. She gave me the day off. I had some date palms with me. Some say he done some trade and he got the date palm or the dates. Others say he had the dates with him. He says, I had the dates and I went to Masjid Quba and I saw many companions of the Rasul gathered around the Rasul. And finally I had a turn and I went close and I said, oh Muhammad, oh Ahmed, this is some dates as a charity for you. He says Rasulullah accepted and took the dates. And I was told by the priest that the Prophet of the time won't eat anything that's sadaqah, that's charity. So when he received the dates, I was focused, I was analyzing him, I was watching him. He took off his shawl, he placed the dates on that shawl, and he told his companions around him, come and eat. Why? Because this is sadaqah, and as you know, I don't eat sadaqah, charity. And the companions came and they took out the dates. He says, in my mind, I said, wahida, that's one of the signs that's true. He says, after a while, I went back and life continued and I started working. And another day came and I asked for the day off and I got clemency and one of the ladies allowed me to go. Again, I went with dates. And I went to the Rasul ﷺ and I told him, Ya Rasulullah, O Muhammad, this is a gift, hadaya, this is a hadiyah, ilayk, lak, for you, O Muhammad ﷺ. And the Rasul ﷺ received it, he accepted it, he consumed some of the dates, and then he distributed the rest amongst his companions. I said, that's the second. But then the third one is difficult. How do you see someone's shoulders? You can't randomly go up to someone and say, I want to look like, can you take off your top? It just wouldn't be right. So he says that I'm confused and I don't know how to ascertain and determine the third sign. So one day there was and then the Rasul obviously came to Madinatul Munawwara. And Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anhu and the Rasul were same age. He was a unique companion. The Rasul ﷺ on one occasion said that Jannah is mushtaq. Jannah is desirous of three people. I believe it was Ali, Ammar and Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anhum ajma'een. That's the maqam of this companion. He says one day there was a death in the city of Medina And the first person to be buried in Jannatul Baqi was to be buried. He says, I came to that site, I saw the people, I saw the community, I saw the Sahaba, the companions had gathered, and there was a person that was buried. But from the back, I was peeping and trying to see the shoulder blades of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And finally the Rasul saw me, and he saw that I was trying to see, and I saw that there was the seal of prophethood bayna katifay, between his shoulder blades. And then the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam called me. He said, Ma khabruk, what's going on? I've seen that you've been watching me, and you've been trying to see my back, and you want to see what I'm doing. Why? What's wrong? Tell me your story. And then he tells Ibn Abbas that I narrated my story to the Rasul the way I have narrated it to you thus far. Pillar to post, country to country, continent to continent, in search of the truth. And he says, O Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, this is my story, and now that you have seen, and I have seen these three signs, I believe, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. The story of Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anhu told you and I that hidayah for some will be given on a golden plate. But for others it will be written after a lot of sacrifice. After being a slave to 13 people. He says, I accepted the deen of Islam, but then life carried on. I was still a slave. What do I do? He says, I went back, and again you have to remember Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anhu and the Rasul were the same age. So when the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what age did the Rasul come to Madinatul Munawwarah? How old was he? 53 years old. So Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anhu is approximately in his mid-50s by this point. He's still a slave. And then after a while, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam one day calls him and he says, Oh Salman, what's going on? He says, Ya Rasulullah, I'm still a slave and my master won't free me. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Katib ya Salman. Oh Salman, come into a transaction of mukataba where you buy your freedom from your master. He went back to his master, but his master wasn't willing to free him. He wasn't willing to free him at any cost. One day the Rasul told him, Salman, oh Salman, why don't you just negotiate? Ask him what he wants. Ask him what he desires and tell him to name his price, and we'll see what can be done. So Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anhu says, I went to my master and I told him, look, whatever you want, name your price and we'll see what we can do. So he said, I want you to give me 300 date palms, that you find some fragile land, you dig the ground, you plant these 300 trees, and alongside that I want 40 uqiyah of gold. Salman radiallahu anhu says, I was so demoralized that according to some narrations, he says, I never even went back to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I felt embarrassed that where am I going to get three date palm trees would have been difficult. Where am I going to find 300? Where am I going to look? He says, after a while I saw the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam called me and said, oh Salman, what happened? Did you speak to your master? He says, yes, Ya Rasulullah, I spoke to him. Okay, so what did he say? He says, Ya Rasulullah, he wants 300 date palm trees to be planted into the ground. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, by the qasam of Allah, was the most optimistic person you will ever find. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam never said, oh Salman, that's impossible. Oh Salman, you're on your own. Oh Salman, I can't help you. What did the Rasul do? He done an open fundraiser. The Rasul done an open, he said, A'inu akhakum. Oh my camp of Sahaba, it's time for you to stand up and help your brother. In essence, what was the Rasul doing? The Rasul saw the talent of Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu an. He understood what an asset this man could be to the ummah, and he knew he had some financial burdens. So the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam told Sahaba, let's get together and let's buy his freedom so he can serve the ummah of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I remember when I was in South Africa, I met a brother 40 years old from Malawi, 6 children. He was studying alone in the madrasa, and I asked him, naturally I was a bit shocked and surprised, that 40 years old, you got 6 kids, how are you taking care of your family? He says, let me tell you my story. He says that, long story short, we don't have time, but he said that someone came to me and they felt that I could be an asset to my community, and my community needed a scholar. So that person is funding my family, funding my studies, in the hope and the quest that after 6 years I will go back and serve my community. What a sadaqah jariyah. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, oh Sahaba, a'inu akhakum, help your brother. Open fundraiser. And then some Sahaba give 30 trees, some give 20 trees, some give 15, others give 10. And then the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells Salman, oh Salman, you find the land, you find some companions to help you, dig up the holes, but when the time comes for me to place the date palm into the ground and plant it into the ground, call me and I will do it with my own hand. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw talent. The other day on Thursday, we spoke about investing in people. The Rasul invested in people. When he saw talent, the Rasul never allowed that talent to go to waste. And you see in the young companions, whether it's the Mu'adh ibn Jabal, whether it's the Abdullah ibn Abbas, who at a very young age, his mother, she came and she bought some dates for the Rasul to do tahniq. What was the mother in essence doing? She was exposing her son to the opportunity of spirituality. When the young mother bought Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu and said, Ya Rasulullah, this is your khadim, keep him as long as you want to. The mother was exposing her young Anas to the opportunity of spirituality. And the Rasul, when he saw that, he invested in people. When the army was to go out, Usama bin Zayd radiallahu anhu was made the leader. How old was he? 17 years old. The leader of an army which has kibar from Sahaba. Leaders and senior Sahaba, but the leader and the Amir of that expedition was Usama bin Zayd. The Rasul is showing that I see your skill set, I acknowledge it, and I want to invest in it so that the ummah can benefit. Today, unfortunately, we don't want to see people grow. We want to limit the growth of people. We are unhappy, it's sad and it's unfortunate. And many a time, sometimes we may feel it's probably a global problem, but within the community, we don't want to support one another. We're having a conversation with Junaid the other day. People don't want to support. People want to, they want to halt the progression of others. We see everything as competition. We fail to understand we are all branches of one tree serving one purpose. We are all branches of one tree serving one purpose. Khair, so Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anhu, they gathered the 300. He says, I dug the ground and I called the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam transplanted those and planted those tree stumps into the ground. Generally, if you were to do this and you had multiple trees, it's very highly likely possible that some of them would die. He says, by the qasam of Allah, from the entirety of the 300, not even one tree died. After a while, I came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, oh Salman, are you free? He says, Ya Rasulullah, I done the 300, but that was 50% of the negotiation. Where do I get the 40 uqiyah of gold? What do I do about that? The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, someone just came to me and they gave me some gold. Take it and use it for your freedom and see how much it weighs. He says, I weighed that gold. I weighed the gold that someone came and gave to the Rasul, and the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam gave to me, and when I weighed it, it was exactly 40 uqiyah of gold. Divine Man atani yamshi ataytuhu harwalatan. चश्म अक़वाम से मख्फी है हकीकत तेरी, जिंदा रखती है ज़माने को हरारत तेरी. जफ़ा जो इश्क़ में होती है वो जफ़ा ही नहीं, सितम न हो तो मोहब्बत में कोई मज़ा है ही नहीं. This is, even though we quoted it for Bilal, this is so applicable to Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anh. Jafa jo ishq mein hoti hai, wo jafa hi nahi. Difficulty in the path of acquiring something you love isn't difficult. Someone who enjoys studying, you give them a book to do mutala'a and to study and to read, they'll spend 5 hours and it'll feel like 5 minutes. They will remain seated on the same position for 5 hours and it will feel like 5 minutes, even though when they stand up they may feel some pain in their leg. That doesn't feel like pain because I'm doing something I love. Some of you brothers probably sitting here 30 minutes and our legs are hurting. I'm comfortable, that's why I asked for the chair. I remember when we were studying, we had a teacher, Mufti Muhammad Sa'id Mutara Hafidhahullah. Allah protect him and preserve him. What a scholar. What a scholar. When he used to come to teach us, and one of his teachers was also our teacher. So we had 2 teachers of Sahih al-Bukhari. They used to teach half-half, but one was the teacher of the other at one stage in his life. Out of respect, reverence and honor for his teacher, whenever he would come and there would be a cushion, he would remove the cushion and sit on the hard wood out of respect for his ustad, that how dare I sit on the place of my ustad. And he would sometimes teach a dars for 1 hour, sitting in tashahhud on that plank of wood that had maybe some thin cloth over it. Today in class when we teach our students, within 10 minutes, I promise you, Mubarak's the witness, maybe now Samir and Babar, within 10 minutes of me telling them to sit in tashahhud, Ustad, can I cross my legs? Within 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And here the Ustad, 60 plus, 70 plus, in tashahhud for the entirety of an entire hour. Jafa jo ishq mein hoti hai, wo jafa hi nahi. Sitam na ho to mohabbat mein koi maza hai hi nahi. Khair, so Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anh, exactly 40 uqiyah, he goes and he buys his freedom. He wasn't able to participate in Badr and Uhud because the Rasul was unable to ask him to because he was still a slave. But the moment Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anh acquired his freedom, he never missed a battle ever again. And what's the battle where he had the greatest input? The Rasul ﷺ is in Madinatul Munawwarah, and he hears that there's 10,000 people that have gathered, joined hands. Listen to the words. Different people that have come together under one vision, and that is to eradicate the deen of Islam. Al-Aqilu takfihi al-ishara. Multiple groups that have united under one banner to totally eradicate the deen of Allah. 10,000 people marching towards Madinatul Munawwarah, the city of the Rasul. Rasulullah ﷺ is worried. What do we do? We're not prepared. How do we defend ourselves? Salman Al-Farsi says, Ya Rasulullah, when I was in Persia, look at the experience. Salil mujarrab wa la tas'al al-hakim. The experience of people, and especially for us young people, we have to learn from the experience of our elders. Why is Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu an, who's 50, 60 years old, mentioning this story, or maybe even beyond that, mentioning this story in such detail to Ibn Abbas, who's barely 13, 15? So that the young Ibn Abbas can learn life lessons. In the story of Ka'b bin Malik that inshallah we'll go through at some point, who narrates the hadith of Ka'b bin Malik? His son. Why? Because the Ka'b bin Malik is teaching us, as fathers, tell your sons about the mistakes you made so that they learn and they don't make the same mistakes. That's the lesson. That's why there's importance given to detail. Why, O Ibn Abbas, you're going to grow up and become a leader of the ummah, you need to learn these lessons. He says, Ya Rasulullah, in Persia, whenever there was this kind of situation, we would barricade ourselves within to protect ourselves from the external threat. Rasulullah said, what an opinion. We will execute the opinion of Salman, and of course we know that the trench was dug miles long. And Rasulullah in that moment where 10,000 are coming towards you, behind you is the mountain, Banu Qurayza have gone rogue, they've broken the pact and the agreement. What do? But Rasulullah strikes the stone. The Roman Empire will become ours. He strikes it again. The Persian, Ya Rasulullah, we're surrounded by 10,000 people. We don't know if we're going to make it out of this alive. And you're speaking about Roman Persia, but Sahaba believed and they had that yaqeen and that certainty. Today across the globe, our brothers and sisters are suffering, and they may be barricaded in within a very minimal piece of land. And that may be the reason why many of us become possibly very pessimistic, very negative. But we have to understand that the help of Allah will come when Allah wants it to come. Ala inna nasrallahi qareeb. Mata nasrullah? Sahaba asked, Mata nasrullah? It was such a difficult moment in the lives of Sahaba. بلغت القلوب الحناجر وتظنون بالله الظنون هنالك ابتلي المؤمنون وزلزلوا زلزالا شديدا. Sahaba was shaken like never before. But then what happened? لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة. In the life of your Rasul is an example. Take from the optimistic of your Rasul. When it feels like there's no light at the end of that tunnel, that marriage isn't working, that proposal isn't going through, that job isn't coming, you've been jobless for a year or 15 months or 18, whatever it is. If the Rasul at the time of Hudaybiyah could remain so optimistic and strike a rock and say, I see futuhat of Sham, I see the futuhat of the Romans and the Persians. If your marriage is taking longer, then don't worry, it'll work out. It may take time. Sometimes you got to be patient. The young brothers these days, it's good if you're able to get married as soon as you can. Then obviously the Rasul said, Ya ma'shar al-shabab man istata'a minkum al-ba'a falyatazawwaj. If you're young and you have all the requirements and you're stable in many ways, then get married. But if it's not working and you're 27 and you're panicking. I remember I had a friend, I'll conclude with this. I had a friend, he was about, I believe, 29. Multiple failed attempts at marriage, just wasn't working out. And the time came where he started to lose hope. And many a time he felt like, yo, this is the one. This is I want to marry her. And somehow it just never worked out. Another one, yo, this is her. It's never worked out. And I told him, brother, trust me. I promise you, just have tawakkul. And when the time comes, you will be grateful that everything here never worked out. Everything here, you'll be grateful it never happened. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, I believe it was a year later when he was 30, he got married. Now, Alhamdulillah, got multiple children. And when we speak, I ask him, he says, Wallahi, thumma wallahi, I'm so happy that everything before my wife never worked out because Allah gave me the best that I could have got. Patience. The system, we're living in an instant world, instant coffee, instant, now we want instant gratification. You give one khutbah, one bayan, why doesn't the community love me? You lead one salah, why doesn't the community love my voice? I do one thing, why doesn't the community appreciate? We're looking for instant gratification, instant results. I done this, why hasn't, I performed tahajjud, why am I not married? I performed tahajjud, why don't I have a kid? Habibi, you need to get married before you can get a kid. One guy came to the sheikh and said, Imam, make dua, I have a child. I want the child to be righteous, pious and everything. The Imam made a long dua for him. Then he said, tell your wife to come visit and I'm going to speak to both of you. He said, Sheikh, I'm not married yet. He said, why are you wasting my time? Sister, Allah has a system. You want to get married, you want to have children, you get married. I would, khair, there's kids here. Samir is too young. But khair, so we make, Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anh, he gave the advice. It was a very difficult moment in the life of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the battle of Ahzab. But Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anh, his opinion is what was followed and the Muslims were successful. There will be difficult days that the ummah will have to experience. There will be difficult moments. وَلَلْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنَ الْأُولَى. We make dua to Allah that He allow us to see the futuhat of the ummah of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He allow us to see the openings for the ummah of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Those who are struggling to get married, Allah make it easy for them to get married. Those who are married, Allah protect their marriages. Those who have children, Allah protect their children. Those who don't have children, Allah bless them with pious offspring. I will make dua to Allah that Allah allow us to understand the ahmiyah and the importance of the deen of Allah. If there's one lesson you take from the story of Salman Al-Farsi, he traveled the world. 30 years of a journey. 30 years of a journey at minimum before he found the Rasul. Minimum 30, 35, 40 years. And within three days or 3 months or 3 years, we want to reach levels of spirituality without any sacrifice. The deen of Allah has a system. Jiski jitni qurbani us par itni mehrbani. The more sacrifice you make, the more rahmah of Allah that will descend upon you. So Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anh was a unique companion. Inshallah, next week we'll go through a few more elements of his life. And then we'll move on to the next companion. We'll make dua to Allah that Allah bless this gathering. Allah bless us with His love, the love of those actions that will bring us closer to His love, and the love of those who will bring us closer to His love. We'll make dua to Allah that He allow us to have istiqamah. Yes, last week as well when I left, after the brother who asked me, like, why did you choose Sahaba and this series or this class? He said that he knows of a scholar who used to speak about companions in another state. I won't mention his name or where he's from. And he used to go through the lives of companions, and a time came where the attendance became so low. And myself and Salman spoke about this the other day. The attendance became so low and he lost motivation and he stopped. He said, I stopped doing the classes until one day I ran into a youngster who used to attend those classes. And he said, Sheikh, why did you stop? You know, after I heard about some companion, I was so inspired that it changed the entirety of my life. The trajectory of my life changed. He said, by the qasam of Allah, after I heard what that young boy said to me, I made a pact that I will continue this series to its completion and conclusion, even if there's only one person sitting. Istiqamah. Al-istiqamatu fawqa al-fakarama. We make dua to Allah that He give us istiqamah, He give us steadfastness, and we appreciate the brothers in the masjid for allowing this class to take place. Allah allow it to be on our mizan, your mizan of hasanat and their mizan of hasanat on the day of Qiyamah, when every single one of you has to stand in front of Allah. It'll be these moments that will matter. These 30 minutes, 35 minutes where you and I sat on a Monday evening in the hope that, Ya Allah, allow my spirituality to grow. Oh Allah, you become mine and let me become yours. Jisne Allah ko pa liya, sab kuch pa liya. Jisne Allah ko kho diya, sab kuch kho diya. You can gather the world, but Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anh told you, until you don't have Allah, you have nothing. And you can have nothing, but if you have Allah, Salman Al-Farsi radiallahu anh taught you, you have everything. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.